Since 1996, the Social Insurance Fund has been continuously in surplus as the contributions from employees and employers through PRSI exceeded the payouts to people getting social welfare or pensions. Now, however, the government's mismanagement of the economy has landed us in a serious and deteriorating situation in respect of the Social Insurance Fund. This year, because of rising unemployment, it is expected that the fund will have an annual deficit, a loss or shortage of 223 million. For 2009, it is expected that the deficit will be at least 900 million. In other words, there will be a shortage of income into the fund compared to expenditure of 900 million. At this rate, the accumulated surplus on the fund could be exhausted by 2011. This year, the Minister expected a surplus on the fund of 548 million. Instead, as I said, she expects now a deficit of 223 million. This has grave consequences for future budgets and for our whole pay-related social insurance system. That's a turnaround this year of 770 million loss on the fund over what was expected. The government promised in their programme for government to reform PRSI. They promised to abolish the PRSI ceiling, currently 52,000 since the budget, and to reduce PRSI rates. But instead of reforming PRSI, the government chose to introduce a 1% income levy on all incomes, bar social welfare payments and incomes below the minimum wage. Running the social insurance funds onto the rocks could have a significant impact on the unemployed and indeed for pensioners expecting their contributory old age pension. I don't know whether it is that this government is just planning callously to bequeath to a new government after the next election a disastrous social insurance fund position. There's been a collapse in public accounting in recent years. The Department of Finance and now the Department of Social Welfare seem to have lost their ability to make accurate forecasts of economic activity, tax revenues, or in this case, the movements on the Social Insurance Fund. There is a need in this country, as there is in quite a number of other countries, for a public actuary, possibly based in the NTMA. A public actuary would prepare reliable, independent forecasts in respect of pension liabilities, unemployment liabilities, and the level of necessary contributions required to sustain a properly funded system. The Minister and the Government seem to be asleep on the job in relation to what is happening in the Social Insurance Fund. It may well be that the civil servants in the department have advised the Minister, but the Minister chose to ignore what's happening to the fund. And remember, the fund was brought into surplus during the Rainbow, on a very, very hard-fought basis, because when Labour went into government with Fianna Fáil, the unemployment rate at that time that we inherited was 18%. I served with your colleague in that government, the then Minister Michael Woods. And by 1996, when Labour was in government, as I say, we had got the fund into surplus. And now all of that is being thrown away, and the future consequences of the kind of deficits that the Minister is building up are truly horrendous for both the economy and for people who rely on social welfare pensions and a social welfare income if they are unemployed. One thing that is remarkable by its absence in this bill, there is not a single back-to-work measure despite the fact that 100,000 people have lost their jobs in the last year. I do not know how the Minister could produce a social welfare bill with no back-to-work measures in it to encourage people that if they do have to rely for social welfare on a short period, that they can move at least into some kind of education, training or indeed employment. Is the Minister and the officials oblivious to the plight of people who are coming unemployed? Could she not find the time to introduce even a single concrete back-to-work measure? In the current economic climate, that is not just an oversight, it's a dereliction of duty. The new bill contains a serious number of new and additional poverty traps which the Minister and her staff have the capacity to analyse, to avoid or to limit their impact. The biggest poverty trap at the moment, as the Minister I'm sure is aware, is rent allowance. People are effectively barred from working if they are in receipt of rent allowance or mortgage subsidies. This means that somebody losing their job, and unfortunately there are a lot of people who are two-income couples, a lot of families, two-income couples, one person, maybe the husband, the male partner working in construction, losing employment at the moment. They often have mortgages of €1,600 to €2,000 euros a month. To get a mortgage subsidy or to get rent allowance, but it would be more likely to be a mortgage subsidy, they and their household effectively have to become completely unemployed and state dependent. Those people at risk of mortgage default, and there are many in that category, combination of high mortgage monthly payments, negative equity, and their job prospects shrinking, they will be encouraged to go from work to welfare and not to go back to work in order to maintain the roof over their head. Now, I think that this is one of the most pressing issues facing the Minister and her department. This is a policy failure by the Minister which will have very negative social consequences, because we know that in relation to unemployment, that if you get a build-up of unemployment for more than, say, a year or two, it becomes endemic into the family, and then it becomes intergenerational. And then we are back where we started in 1992, with whole areas of the country where unemployment was intergenerational. And I might say as well, some of the measures that have been brought in relation to people in agriculture, huge numbers of people all down the west coast of Ireland who are part-time farmers, have been involved in construction. They're becoming unemployed. And what's the Minister, not this Minister doing, but our colleagues doing? They're cutting the farm schemes which allowed construction workers, to many of them part-time farmers. Minister, I admit, I come from the city centre. What I know about farming would fit on a postage stamp, but I can tell you what the government is proposing will save very little, and it makes no economic sense. It's again driving people back into social welfare rather than keeping people independent and viable and maintaining an individual personal income. The Labour Party has published detailed proposals for back to work and back to education schemes, including a national insulation scheme which would also help our carbon emissions, rather than the very limited kind of small project that has been put forward in the budget. We also proposed a school building programme. Again, that programme would be right around the country. And again, it would have important consequences and benefits, not just for people living in towns working in the construction industry, but for people living in more rural areas. Many people becoming unemployed in the construction industry have the skills with which, with training and upskilling, they can become the engineers, the technicians and the IT consultants of tomorrow. But your bill doesn't have any visionary element to it at all. Your bill proposes restrictions rather than encouragements. And
Burton's time has expired.
Okay. The message from this government is loud and clear. Fat cat bankers get bailouts. Property developers get tax breaks, but the people on the bottom rung of the economic ladder, all they seem to get is a kick in the teeth. And unfortunately, I think Minister Hanafin is like the Grinch, stealing Christmas from thousands of hard-pressed families across the country.